Imagine this. I want you to picture the scene. We're in Egypt. We're in the land of Goshen, and the air is thick. It's hot, and it's heavy with the smell of incense and death.
It's a heavy atmosphere.
It is. And we're standing at a bedside. There's a powerful patriarch there. I mean, this is a man who's literally wrestled with God in the mud. He's deceived his own father with a bowl of stew and some goat hair. He's negotiated with kings.
This is Jacob. This is the end of an era. The sun is really setting on the last of the great patriarchs.
Exactly. And gathered all around him are 12 men, his sons. And if you look at their faces, this is not a warm, fuzzy family reunion. This is tense.
Yeah, you could cut the tension with a knife.
Some of these men are loyal, sure,
Mm-hmm.
but some are violent. I mean, actual murderers who wiped out an entire town. Some are treacherous. And for decades, it's a volatile, really dysfunctional group has been held together by just the sheer force of this old man's will.
And now that will is fading.
It's fading.
Yeah.
And the question hanging in the air, it's unspoken, but it's deafening. It's simply, who gets the power?
Who inherits the blessing when the breathing stops?
It feels like the season finale of some high-stakes family drama, the kind of thing you'd binge watch until 3 in the morning. Old secrets are about to come out. Destiny is about to be assigned.
Right.
But here's the kicker. This isn't just a family meeting. The father, Jacob, he opens his mouth, and he doesn't just give advice on how to split the livestock. He issues a prophecy. He starts talking about the last days.
And that one phrase just elevates the stakes from, a domestic squabble to a cosmic event. He's not just looking at the next 5 years, he's looking down the entire corridor of time.
Welcome, everyone, to Timely Word.
It's great to be here to break this all down.
We have a lot to cover today. We're trying something pretty ambitious, I think. We're weaving together 3 very distinct, very intense threads. We're going to be looking at that deathbed scene in Genesis 49 and 50, the end of Jacob's life.
Okay.
Then we're going to jump forward thousands of years to the words of Jesus in Matthew 25, where he talks about the end of the age.
A huge leap.
And just for a moment, to set a really stark contrast, we're going to look at this dark, almost cynical moment from the book of Job.
It sounds like a lot of moving parts, but you're right. The theme is actually singular. We're looking at the end of a life, Jacob, and later Joseph, and the end of the age in the parables of Jesus. And the central question we're really driving at today is simple.
What is it?
When the end comes, and it comes for all of us, whether it's your personal end or the cosmic end, will you be found ready?
Okay, so before we get into the specific words Jacob says, help us really feel the vibe in that room in Egypt. Because if you don't know the backstory, if you haven't seen the previous seasons, so to speak, you might miss why these brothers are sweating.
Right. And to borrow your analogy, if this is the season finale, you absolutely have to remember the flashbacks. This family is, let's just say, complicated.
That's putting it mildly.
Decades ago, these very brothers, well, 10 of them, took their younger brother, Joseph, their father's favorite, and they sold him into slavery.
They didn't just sell him. They thought about killing him. They threw him in a dry well first.
A horrific betrayal. They sold him to a passing caravan. And then, and this part's just chilling, they went home, they dipped his special coat in goat's blood, and they lied to their father's face for years, for decades. They let him believe that his beloved son was torn apart by wild beasts.
The grief must have been just unimaginable.
They almost killed him. And now, you fast forward, Joseph isn't dead. Through this incredible series of divine interventions and personal integrity, he's now the prime minister of Egypt. He is the second most powerful man in the known world.
He controls the global food supply. He has life and death authority over everyone in the entire region, including his own family.
Exactly. So the brothers are currently living in Egypt under his protection, but that protection has largely been secured because their father, Jacob, is still alive. Jacob is the buffer. He's the glue.
So they're terrified. They think once Jacob dies, the buffer's gone.
The buffer is gone. And the question is, does Joseph finally take his revenge? Does the family just completely fall apart? The tension in that room is so thick because their safety net is literally expiring with every breath Jacob takes.
So when Jacob says, gather yourselves together, it's not just come say goodbye to dad. It's come find out if you even have a future.
Precisely. Genesis 49 verse 1 says, "Gather yourselves together that I may tell you what will happen to you in the last days." And that phrase, the last days, that's the signal. We are moving from family history into divine prophecy. He's talking about the destiny of the 12 tribes that will come from these men. It's a forecast of the distant future.
Let's walk through some of these, because the honesty here is just, it's brutal. He does not pull any punches. He starts with the oldest, Reuben. Now, normally the oldest gets everything, right? The double portion, the leadership, the priestly role.
That was the custom, yes, the law of primogeniture. The firstborn was the designated leader, the head of the family. And look at what Jacob says in verses 3 and 4. He starts by acknowledging Reuben's status. My firstborn, my might, and the firstfruits of my vigor.
So he's saying, you had it all. You had the potential.
All of it. Preeminent in dignity and preeminent in power. Reuben looked the part. He had the title. He was supposed to be the one.
But then comes the, however, the plot twist.
The twist. Ebullient as water, you will not have the preeminence.
Ebullient. That's a word you don't hear often. Today it sounds positive, like cheerful or bubbly. But the context here feels much, much darker. It means boiling over, right? Like uncontained energy.
Yeah, that's exactly it. The Hebrew root word here is pachaz, and it refers to water that is frothing, boiling over, or reckless and uncontrolled. Think about what happens when you spill a glass of water on a table.
It goes everywhere.
It goes everywhere. It's unstable. It follows the path of least resistance. It has no shape of its own. It just takes the shape of whatever container it's in, or think of a flash flood. It's incredibly powerful, but it's destructive and totally uncontrolled. Jacob is saying Reuben's character is like that. Powerful, but unstable.
And he connects this character flaw directly to a specific moral failure in Reuben's past, doesn't he?
He does. He brings up the skeletons. He references the incident when Reuben slept with his father's concubine, Bilhah. It was an impulsive act of passion, sure, but it was also a kind of political power play. It was an attempt to assert dominance in the household.
And Jacob never forgot it.
He never forgot it. He says right here on his deathbed, you went up to your father's bed, then you defiled it. It was a massive transgression. It's incestuous. It's a power grab. It's a deep betrayal of trust.
Wow.
And the takeaway here is frighteningly relevant, especially when you look at leadership crises in the news today. Status doesn't guarantee your outcome. You can be the firstborn. You can have the title, the talent, the position, the seniority. But if your character is ebullient as water, if you lack self-control and integrity, you disqualify yourself from true leadership. Reuben lost his preeminence because he couldn't control his impulses. He had the birthright, but he just lacked the backbone.
That is a sobering start to a final blessing. You have the title, but you don't have the character.
Yeah.
Then he moves on to the next two, Simeon and Levi. And he kind of lumps them together.
He does. He calls them brothers, but not in a warm, fuzzy way. It's more like partners in crime. He says, weapons of violence are their swords. And then he says something really stark. Come not into their counsel, O my soul. He's actively distancing himself from his own sons on his deathbed.
Ouch. This goes back to that horrific incident at Shechem, doesn't it? Where they massacred an entire town to avenge their sister Dinah.
Yes. And it's how they did it that's so vile. They used a religious rite circumcision as a trap. They convinced all the men of Shechem to get circumcised to intermarry with them, and then while the men were recovering and in pain and completely vulnerable,
Simeon and Levi just slaughtered them.
they slaughtered them. Jacob calls it anger and wrath. And notice what he says, cursed be their anger, for it is fierce. He doesn't curse the men themselves. He curses their anger.
That distinction feels important.
It is. It shows that the problem isn't their existence, it's their character, this toxic, violent rage. But the consequence for them is still severe. He says, I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel.
And historically, that's exactly what happened, right? The tribe of Levi didn't get a specific land inheritance like the others. They were scattered throughout Israel as the priestly tribe.
Exactly. Now, God eventually redeemed that scattering by making them the priests, the Levites, which is a whole other story of grace.
Yeah.
But they never had a unified political territory like the other tribes.
Why?
It's a powerful reminder that unbridled anger and violence, they fracture a legacy, they scatter things. Violence is a centrifugal force. It just pushes everything apart.
Okay, so let's look at the scorecard so far. Reuben, the firstborn, is out due to instability. Simeon and Levi, numbers 2 and 3, are out due to violence. So logic would dictate the camera should pan to the fourth son, Judah.
Right.
Now, Judah has had his own, let's just say, very messy issues in the past. He's the one who suggested selling Joseph in the first place.
Yeah.
But the tone shifts completely here.
It does. It's a total pivot. Verse 8, Judah, your brothers will praise you. This is where the prophecy really reaches its crescendo. Jacob doesn't just describe Judah, he anoints him. He calls him a young lion.
The Lion of the tribe of Judah. I mean, this is some of the most iconic imagery in the entire Bible.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
why him, of all people? Why does the blessing of leadership land on the fourth son who had such a checkered past?
Well, on one level, it's a beautiful picture of grace choosing the unlikely vessel. But it also speaks to a real change in Judah's character over the years. You have to remember, later in the story, when they were all in Egypt and Benjamin was threatened, Judah was the one who stepped forward and offered his own life as a substitute.
Right. Take me instead.
He showed true sacrificial leadership. But prophetically, this is about something much bigger than Judah the man. It's about a coming king. Jacob says, the scepter will not depart from Judah until Shiloh comes.
Okay, stop right there. Shiloh. I've heard that word, usually as the name of a town or maybe a famous battle, but let's unpack it in this context. Is it a place, a person? What are we talking about?
It's one of the most debated and I think one of the most profound terms in the entire Hebrew Bible. The text says, until Shiloh comes, and to him shall be the obedience of the peoples. So most ancient scholars, both Jewish and the early church fathers, they all agree. This is a person. This is a title for the Messiah.
Okay, so what does the name itself mean?
Well, the etymology is a little tricky. One derivation links it to the Hebrew word for peace, shalom. So it could mean the man of peace.
Which definitely fits the Messiah.
It does. But another interpretation, and perhaps one that's grammatically a little more precise, breaks the word down Shiloh to mean the one to whom it belongs.
The one to whom it belongs. That feels incredibly significant.
It's huge. So what the prophecy is saying is this. The right to rule, the scepter, it's going to act as a placeholder in Judah's line. It will be held by David, by Solomon, by the kings of Judah, until the person arrives who is the true and ultimate owner of that scepter, the King of Kings.
So it's a direct arrow pointing straight to the Messiah. The scepter is just waiting for Jesus.
Absolutely. This is the first clear roadmap in Scripture that the Messiah, the Anointed One, will come specifically through the line of Judah. And the imagery used to describe this figure is just stunning. Verse 11 says he binds his foal to the vine, and get this, he washes his garments in wine and his robe in the blood of grapes.
Blood of grapes. That is a very visceral image.
Yeah.
It makes me think of crushing grapes for wine, obviously, but the word blood makes it sound, well, sacrificial.
It's a dual image, and that's the genius of it. On one hand, it depicts an almost unbelievable abundance of prosperity. Wine is going to be so common that you can do your laundry in it. It's a picture of the kingdom age where joy is just overflowing.
Okay.
But on the other hand, in the context of the Messiah, it absolutely foreshadows the duality of Christ. He is the ruling king, the lion, but he is also the one whose garments are stained.
Stained with blood.
Stained with the blood of grapes, which points us directly to the wine of the new covenant, the blood of his sacrifice. It's this incredible, condensed picture of a king who suffers or a sacrifice who rules. You cannot separate the royalty from the suffering in this single prophecy.
It reminds me of the book of Revelation, where the conquering king appears as a lamb that looks as if it had been slain.
Exactly the same paradox. The power is found in the sacrifice. The lion is also the lamb.
That is fascinating. So you have the Lion of Judah, and then Jacob moves down the line to his favorite son, Joseph.
The fruitful bough. The imagery here shifts completely from, animalistic power to organic, life-giving imagery. A fruitful bough by a fountain, his branches run over the wall.
I love that image, running over the wall. It implies that his influence, his blessing, it can't be contained. It spills over boundaries.
It does. And it signifies that the blessing on Joseph isn't just for his immediate family or even just for the nation of Israel. It extends to the nations. You have to remember, Joseph literally fed the Gentile world during the 7-year famine. His branches went over the wall of Israel to sustain the Gentiles. It's a beautiful hint at the universal scope of God's plan, that the blessing of Abraham would one day reach the whole world.
But Jacob also doesn't shy away from the pain Joseph went through. He says, the archers bitterly attacked him and shot at him and harassed him.
Those archers in his story were his own brothers originally, and Potiphar's wife, and the cupbearer who forgot him in prison. Joseph was a constant target. He was the object of envy and malice. But look at the response in verse 24. But his bow remained firm by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob.
He didn't do it in his own strength.
No. His strength came from God. And then Jacob uses these two incredible titles for God that just strike me. He calls him the shepherd and the stone of Israel.
And this is the first time these are used.
This is the very first time in Scripture that God is called the shepherd. And it's coming from the lips of a dying man who was a shepherd his entire life. He's saying God was his shepherd. And Joseph here is a type or a foreshadowing of Christ. Just as Joseph was rejected, attacked, and suffered, yet became the source of life for the world.
So Christ is the suffering servant who becomes the good shepherd of our souls and the cornerstone of our faith.
Exactly. Jacob sees through his son Joseph to the God who sustained him, and he gives us this beautiful preview of who Jesus will be.
Wow. So we've got the lion and the shepherd, two massive pictures of who God is. Before we leave the brothers, I have to mention the quick-fire descriptions of the others. They are vivid.
They really are. You have Dan, who is described as a serpent in the way that bites the horse's heels.
A viper. Not exactly a compliment you want on your tombstone.
Yeah. And historically, the tribe of Dan is associated with judgment and later with leading Israel into idolatry. Then you have Benjamin, who is described as a ravenous wolf in the morning devouring the prey.
It's just so raw. Jacob isn't giving out participation trophies here. He's exposing the core nature of these future tribes.
He's exposing human nature. And that actually sets us up perfectly for the transition we need to make. Because if you look at this lineup of sons, violence, instability, treachery, savage wolves, it paints a fairly dark picture of humanity. Even the blessed ones, Judah and Joseph, have these deep flaws and painful histories.
Which leads us directly to our second thread. We're going to pivot to a very different voice now, to Bildad the Shuhite from the book of Job.
Poor Bildad. He's one of Job's so-called friends, and he usually gets a bad rap for being pretty unhelpful to Job in his suffering. But in Job chapter 25, he gives this very short speech that perfectly captures a specific theological worldview. He looks up at the majesty of God, dominion and dread are with him, and then he looks down at man.
And he is not impressed with man.
Not at all. He says, how then can a man be righteous with God? Even the moon has no brightness, and the stars are not pure in his eyes.
And then comes the kicker, verse 6.
How much less a man a maggot, and the son of man a worm.
A maggot and a worm. That is the low anthropology to end all low anthropologies. It sounds like something born of intense depression or just pure self-loathing.
It's the ultimate contrast. What Bildad is doing is he's looking at the holiness of God, the absolute blinding, unapproachable purity of the Creator, without a mediator, without a savior. And when you stand next to the sun, you don't look like a king. You look like a speck of dust. You look like a worm.
So he's not technically wrong.
He isn't technically wrong about the infinite distance between a holy God and sinful man, but he's missing the bridge. He sees the lion aspect of God's power, the dominion, and the dread, but he has absolutely no concept of the shepherd who seeks the lost, or the Shiloh who comes to bring peace.
So we have this image of man as a worm,
Yeah.
a maggot, hopeless, dirty.
Uh-huh.
But then we turn the page thousands of years forward to Matthew 25. Jesus is speaking, and the way he talks about his followers could not be more different.
This is the glorious pivot. This is the good news. In Matthew 25, Jesus, who also calls himself the Son of Man, doesn't call his followers worms. He calls them virgins waiting for a wedding. He calls them slaves who have been entrusted with massive wealth. He calls them sheep and blessed of my Father.
It's a complete reclassification of humanity.
It is. The kingdom of the heavens, which is the whole theme of Matthew 25, is about elevating the worm to a ruler over many things. And how? Not by our own merit, certainly not, but through a living relationship with the king. Through the oil, through the talents, through the new nature we receive. It's an impartation of dignity from God himself.
Let's dive into that. Matthew 25, the parable of the 10 virgins. This is one of those stories that's so familiar, but maybe too familiar. We can miss the sting of it.
I think that's right. The setup is a wedding procession. In that culture, the bridegroom would come to the bride's house, often at night, to escort her to the wedding feast. The bridesmaids, these 10 virgins, their job was to be ready with lamps to light the way. It was basically a torchlight parade.
So the mission is simple. Be ready for the groom.
Right. And notice on the outside, they all look the same. They are all virgins. They all have lamps. They all go out to meet him. They all have the same profession of faith, you could say. If you took a snapshot of them at 8:00 p.m., you could not tell the difference between them.
But 5 are foolish and 5 are prudent. What is the one thing that separates them?
Oil. It's all about the oil. The foolish took their lamps, which you can think of as the outward vessel, the form of religion, the profession of faith, but they took no oil with them. The prudent, however, took oil in their vessels along with their lamps. They had an extra supply. They had an inner reality to back up their outward appearance.
So the bridegroom is delayed. It's taking longer than they thought it would, and they all fall asleep.
Which is such an interesting and compassionate detail. Sleeping isn't the sin here. Both the foolish and the prudent slept. We all have physical limitations. We all live in the world. We have jobs. We get tired. The issue isn't that they got tired. The issue is what they had in reserve for when they woke up.
And then at midnight, The cry goes out, "Behold the bridegroom." Everyone wakes up, they start trimming their lamps, and this is the crisis point. The foolish virgins realize their lamps are sputtering and going out. They're running on fumes.
And in their panic, they turn to the prudent and say, "Give us some of your oil."
Okay, and the prudent say no. Now, I have to play devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
Isn't that selfish? It feels a little unchristian not to share. Love your neighbor, right? Why do the prudent hoard their oil?
It's a great question, and it feels very harsh if you think the oil is just a physical commodity like gasoline or water. But in the parable, the oil represents something that simply cannot be transferred from one person to another at the last minute.
Like what?
It represents spiritual maturity. It represents the Holy Spirit's deep, saturating work in your soul over time. It represents your personal history with God, the prayers, the struggles, the victories.
I can't give you my relationship with God. I can't just hand over my spiritual preparation like a bottle of water.
Exactly. You cannot live on your parents' oil. You cannot live on your pastor's oil. You can't borrow integrity or spiritual depth 5 minutes before a crisis hits. Think of it like studying for a final exam. If you haven't studied all semester, you can't turn to the person next to you and ask them to share their knowledge 5 minutes before the test begins. The knowledge has to be inside you.
That makes perfect sense. When the bridegroom arrives, you either have it or you don't. And that's why the prudent say, "Go rather to those who sell and buy for yourselves."
Buy. That's another key word. It implies a cost. Grace is free, but this oil costs something.
That's a great distinction. How do we square that?
I think it's this. Salvation is free. Justification is a pure gift of God's grace. But maturity, intimacy, that costs you something. It costs you your time. It costs you your heart. It costs you your attention. You have to buy the truth, buy the oil through those thousands of daily interactions with the Lord, praying when you're tired, reading the word when you're busy, saying no to a temptation. You have to invest yourself to build up that inner supply.
And the tragedy is the foolish try to go buy it at the very last minute.
But it's too late. While they're gone, the bridegroom comes and the door to the wedding feast is shut.
And when they come back and knock, the Lord says from inside, "I do not know you." Not "I hate you" or "you're wicked," but simply "I don't know you." There was no real relationship. They had the lamp, the external appearance of being a Christian, but there was no oil inside.
And the lesson is terrifying but vital. Watchfulness isn't about never sleeping or never getting tired. It's about having the oil of preparation so that even if you do sleep, you are ready the moment you wake up.
Okay, so that's the inward preparation, the oil. The very next parable shifts to our outward activity, the parable of the talents.
Yes, a man is going on a long journey, and he entrusts his possessions to his slaves. To one he gives 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1.
And we should probably clarify for everyone listening, a talent here isn't just the ability to sing or, juggle.
No, not at all. And that's a common misunderstanding that really lessens the impact. In the first century, a talent was a unit of weight, usually of silver. It was a massive amount of money. Some scholars estimate 1 talent was worth about 20 years of a laborer's wages.
So we're talking millions of dollars in today's terms.
We're talking life-changing wealth. The master is entrusting them with his immense capital, and it represents the spiritual capital God gives us, his word, his spirit, his gifts, the gospel itself. It's immensely valuable.
So the guy with 5 talents goes out, he trades, and he doubles it to 10. The guy with 2 doubles it to 4. And the master's response to both of them is identical.
This is such a crucial point. Verses 21 and 23 have the exact same words, "Well done, good and faithful slave." He doesn't say, "Well done, successful slave," or "Well done, 5-talent slave." He says, "faithful."
Right.
And the reward, "Enter into the joy of your master," is exactly the same for the guy who made 2 talents as it is for the guy who made 5. God rewards faithfulness, not volume. This is hugely encouraging for those of us who feel like 2-talent people in a world that only celebrates the 5-talent superstars.
We don't have to produce the most. We just have to be faithful with what we've been given. But then we get to the antagonist of the story, the 1-talent slave. He digs a hole and just hides the money. And when the master comes back, his excuses. It's incredibly telling.
It's a window right into his theology. He says, "Master, I knew you, that you are a hard man, reaping where you did not sow."
He thinks the master is harsh. He thinks he's a thief, essentially, demanding a return on something he didn't even work for.
He views God as a cruel taskmaster who demands the impossible. He projects his own hardness and his own fear onto God. And because his view of God is so warped, his reaction is predictable: fear. "I was afraid," he says, "and went off and hid your talent."
Fear paralyzed him. This feels incredibly modern. We have a whole generation of people just paralyzed by anxiety, afraid to make a move, afraid to fail, so they do nothing.
Exactly. He didn't love the master, he feared him. And because he didn't trust the master's gracious heart, he buried the master's gift. He stagnated, he played it safe. He thought the goal was just don't lose the money. But the goal was always increase the kingdom.
And the master's verdict is swift and brutal,
Yeah.
evil and slothful.
He calls him out. He says essentially, if you really believed I was that greedy and harsh, the least you could have done is put the money in the bank to get some interest. But the slave did nothing at all, and so the talent is taken away from him.
For to everyone who has, more shall be given. But from him who does not have, even that which he has shall be taken away. That sounds so harsh, but it's a law of life, isn't it, in so many areas?
It is the law of the kingdom. Spiritual life is not static, it's dynamic. If you don't use it, if you don't invest it, you lose it. Spiritual atrophy is a real thing. If you have a little bit of light and you bury it under a basket, you eventually go blind. If you use the light you have, you get more light. The master wants us to take risks for the kingdom with what he's given us, not bury it out of a fear of failure. He's looking for partners, not just passive, terrified observers.
So we have the oil, which is our inner life,
Yeah.
and the talents, which is our faithful service. Then comes the finale of Matthew 25, the judgment of the sheep and the goats.
This is it, the final judgment of the nations. The Son of Man sits on his throne of glory. And this connects all the way back to Genesis 49. The Lion of Judah finally has the scepter. He is now the judge of all the earth.
And he separates people. Sheep on the right, goats on the left, and he gives the reason for the separation. And it's not what most people would expect. He doesn't say you passed the theology exam. He doesn't say you had the best quiet times or attended the most Bible studies.
No, he says, I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger. I was naked. I was sick. I was in prison. It's all about tangible acts of compassion.
And here's the crazy part. Both groups, the sheep and the goats, are totally surprised.
That's the key to the whole parable. The righteous, the sheep, they say, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you? They weren't keeping a scorecard. They weren't doing it to earn points with God. They helped the needy simply because they were sheep. It had become their nature. It was an unconscious outflow of the life of God within them. It flowed out of that oil we were talking about. Their inner life with God naturally spilled over into love for their neighbor.
And the goats on the left are also surprised. They say, Lord, when did we not see you and help you?
And the implication is?
The implication is, if we had known it was you, Jesus, of course we would have helped. We would have rolled out the red carpet. We just thought it was some random homeless guy, some prisoner, some nobody.
They would have served the king in his glory, but they despised the king in his disguise. They completely missed the connection between the vertical loving God and the horizontal loving people.
Inasmuch as you have done it to one of these, the least of my brothers, you have done it to me.
This unveils a profound and honestly a staggering mystery about Christ. He identifies himself completely with the least of these, with the suffering, the poor, the imprisoned, the marginalized.
So it brings it all back to a very practical experience. You want to serve the Lion of Judah. You want to be ready for the bridegroom.
Then look for him in the face of the needy, serve the invisible brother, and in doing so, you serve the visible king. It's the practical, real-world application of the oil and the talents. It all flows out into tangible love for others. It's not abstract theology. It's boots on the ground.
So we've seen the prophecy of the king. We've seen the requirements of the kingdom, oil, faithfulness, love. Now, I want to take us all the way back to that deathbed in Egypt, because the story in Genesis didn't end with the prophecy. Jacob dies.
He gathers up his feet into the bed, breathes his last, and expires. The patriarch is gone, and suddenly the whole atmosphere in the room changes. The prophecy is over. The reality sets in.
And for the 10 brothers, that reality is sheer panic.
Absolute panic. Genesis 50, verse 15. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "What if Joseph bears a grudge against us and pays us back in full for all the evil which we did to him?"
They think, okay, the old man is gone. The gloves are about to come off.
They're projecting their own nature onto Joseph. They would have taken revenge, so they assume Joseph will too. Guilt makes you incredibly paranoid. They have been living with this festering guilt for decades, constantly looking over their shoulders, waiting for the other shoe to drop.
So they cook up this desperate scheme. They send a messenger to Joseph, and they claim the messages from their dead father. Your father charged before he died, saying, "Please forgive the transgression of your brothers and their sin."
It's pathetic, really. It shows how little they've changed. They are still lying, still trying to manipulate the situation. They're using their dead father as a human shield. They even come and fall down before him, fulfilling the very first dream Joseph had as a teenager, where their sheaves of wheat bowed down to his. And they say, "Behold, we are here as your servants." They are trying to negotiate a plea deal. They're just trying to save their own skins.
And Joseph's reaction, it breaks my heart every time I read it. He doesn't get angry. He doesn't yell at them for lying. He just weeps.
He weeps because they still don't get it. After all this time, they still don't understand his heart. He has already forgiven them. He's been taking care of them and their families for 17 years. He gave them the best of the land of Egypt. And they still think he's secretly waiting for the chance to kill them. It pains him so deeply that they don't trust his love for them.
And then he says one of the most important lines in the entire Bible.
"Do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God?"
That is huge. He refuses to take the role of a judge.
He abdicates the right to revenge. He realizes that judgment belongs to God, and to God alone. He essentially says, "That's not my job. I'm not God. I can't be your judge." And then he delivers what is really the theological summit of the entire book of Genesis. "As for you, you intended evil against me, but God intended it for good."
To do as it is this day, to preserve alive a numerous people.
He looks back at the betrayal, the slavery, the prison, the false accusations, all the years of suffering, and he sees the sovereign hand of God weaving it all together for salvation. He doesn't just see himself as a victim of their malice. He sees himself as a participant in God's grand redemptive plan. He realizes that God's sovereignty completely overrode their sin. The very thing they did to try and destroy him was the vehicle God used to save them.
And he proves his forgiveness isn't just words. He follows it with action. He says, "I will sustain you and your little ones." He comforts them and speaks kindly to them.
Just like the sheep in Matthew 25. He feeds the hungry. He cares for the very people who hurt him. Joseph is the ultimate picture of Christ here. He has all the power in the world to judge and condemn, but he chooses to use his power to bless and to sustain. He provides food for the very men who threw him in a pit to die. That is the heart of the Father. It is the gospel right there in the Old Testament.
It's a beautiful resolution. The family is healed. Forgiveness is final. But the book doesn't end there. We have one more scene, the final cliffhanger.
The death of Joseph. He lives to be 110 years old. He sees his great-grandchildren. He's had a long, full life. But as he is dying, he makes all the children of Israel swear an oath.
He says, "God will surely visit you."
He says it twice for emphasis. God will surely visit you and bring you up out of this land to the land which he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob.
He knows Egypt isn't the final destination.
Right. They are comfortable in Egypt right now. They have food. They have the best land in Goshen. They're prosperous. But Joseph, with prophetic insight, sees the future. He knows this comfort is temporary. He knows the slavery is coming, eventually the Exodus. So he says, "When God visits you, you shall bring my bones up from here."
He doesn't want to be buried in a great pyramid. He doesn't want a monument in Egypt, even though he's a national hero there.
He wants to be buried in the promised land. He wants his bones to be a part of the promise. He wants to be where God is going, not just where God has been. His faith is facing forward.
And the very last verse of the book of Genesis, it's so haunting. So Joseph died, and they embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt.
A coffin in Egypt.
It sounds so tragic. It sounds like a dead end. The whole story ends with a box of bones in a foreign land.
But it's not a dead end. It's actually a signpost. Think about it. For the next 400 years, through the generations of slavery that were coming, through the hard labor, through the crack of the whip, the Israelites would look at that coffin. It wasn't buried in the ground. It was likely kept above ground, in a place of honor, waiting.
It was a silent sermon.
Exactly. Every single time they saw it, that coffin said, "We don't belong here." It said, "We are leaving." It said, "The story isn't over." That coffin was a tangible witness to the resurrection and the return. It was Joseph's final act of faith, saying, "My hope is not in this world's empire. My hope is in the promise of God."
It's the ultimate to be continued.
It is. It points it forward directly to the Exodus, and then ultimately it points to the empty tomb of Christ. The bones didn't stay in Egypt, and we won't stay in death.
Wow. Okay, let's try and bring this all together. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We really have. We started with the prophecy of the lion and the shepherd, seeing that Christ is both the sovereign king who rules and the suffering savior who lays down his life.
We saw that stark contrast between the maggot view of man in Job and the kingdom view in Matthew. that through a relationship with the king, we are elevated from worms to rulers.
We looked at the serious warnings in Matthew 25, the absolute necessity of oil, that internal reality of the Holy Spirit that you cannot borrow at the last minute, the need for faithful investment, using what God gave us without being paralyzed by fear, and the absolute requirement of love seeing and serving Christ in the least of these.
And we ended with the heart of Joseph forgiveness that completely overrides revenge, and a deep trust in God's providence that can turn the greatest evil into the greatest good.
And finally, that coffin, the hope that transcends the grave itself.
So here's the final thought, the question for you, the listener. We started this by asking, are you ready for the end?
The bridegroom is coming. It might be at midnight. It might be later than you think. But the delay isn't an excuse to get lazy. It's an opportunity to buy oil.
You're holding a lamp. We all are. If you call yourself a believer, you have the lamp. But the question is, do you have oil in the vessel? Is it just the motions, just the appearance, hoping to borrow someone else's faith when the crisis finally hits? Or are you buying the oil now, today, in the quiet moments, in the secret place with God?
And remember Joseph's coffin. We are all living in Egypt, in a world that isn't our final home. And it is so easy to get comfortable here. It's easy to want to build our own little pyramids. But the call is to remember the promise. God will surely visit you. Don't put your hope in the empire. Put your hope in the return.
Stay ready, keep your lamp trimmed, and don't settle for Egypt.
Stay faithful.
Thanks for listening to this timely word.
We'll see you next time.